I want to ask y'all a question. So if I were to ask everybody in this room, do you know somebody that struggles with depression? Would you raise your hand? It's okay if you don't raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Do you mind if I tell you a story real quick? Is it all right if I start out with a story? I remember about 5 years ago, my wife and I were living in Portland, Oregon. And we're living in a small 2-bedroom apartment. And I remember it's a rental, so the glossy off-white walls and tiny little, I think 600 square foot space. And we'd been married about a couple years or so, and we were trying to get our family started and trying to build a life. We had just moved from Spokane to Austin to Portland. We're bouncing around, and here I was trying to build a life. And there was one particular night in Portland where, I'll spare the details to keep it age appropriate, but it was a rough night. It was one of the darkest nights of my life. And I remember I'd had rough nights in the past, but this was different. And I remember my wife coming into the room where I was at one point, and she sat with me, not knowing quite what to do. And I was kind of just sitting here in a ball. And she called a close friend of mine, looking for advice, trying to find out what to do. Called her dad, who actually happens to be a mentor of mine, somebody I'm really close with, thankfully. And trying to figure out, what do I do with him? I have a husband who is depressed. She doesn't struggle with this. I don't know what to do. I need the words. I don't know what to say to this person right now. And she was afraid she was going to lose me. She didn't know what to do. And after that conversation with her dad, she had made sure that it was in a safe spot. So safety, number one priority. And I'll never forget what she told me next. So she told me how much she loved me, what I meant to her, and then she left the room. So that's not really what I was expecting. I was looking for someone to save me. I wanted someone to do the work for me. And I wanted advice. There's a small selfish part of me that wanted some attention, but I didn't see that one coming. So she left. And so here I was, got a new family, son. My son was, I think he was a year and a half at the time. And we're in Portland. We're both working full time, trying to provide. I was an freelance audio engineer at the time, trying to work a full-time job and do the side hustle. And I was just at this kind of turning point, this crossroads in my life of like, what am I going to do? How can I provide? How can I build a family? And I was struggling. So it all came to a crossroads at this night. And I was looking for someone to save me. And she kind of had to, out of love, take a step back and say, you have to want to get better. So that was one of the first starting points for me of change. I had to want to get better. And she had to tell me that. And so that was a big deal. And I had struggled, up until this point, I had struggled with depression and anxiety my entire life. I was not a very secure guy. I was not super confident. It didn't help when you're about 5 foot tall and maybe 80 pounds in middle school. It doesn't really help. I was not on the football team. So I decided that I needed change. Like something in my life had to change. Whatever I was doing was not going well. And so I was like, I need drastic change. I'm a city boy. Like Ryan said, I can't even remember the number. I've moved a lot. And mostly grew up in big cities. And my wife, Sloan, is from Roseburg. She grew up, born and raised here. And I said, you know what? This is crazy, but what if we move to Roseburg? What if we move into your folks' garage, save some money on rent? Because if I can get more money, that'll make our situation better and we can move forward. And long story short, they said no. But so glad they said no. But we moved to Roseburg anyways. So a couple months later, I decided to move us down here, and this was summer of 2015. And so we moved to Roseburg, and this was the one place I swore I would never move to. I told my wife 1,000 times, I said, I'll never move to Roseburg. Excuse my language. I said it was a podunk town. I said, I don't think I can do it. I came from Austin and Portland, like the coolest trending cities in the U.S. I said, I can't move to Roseburg. And here I am. It was about 5 years ago. And so we moved here in the summer of 2015. We moved into a little duplex over in Hillcrest, which I'm actually about to head back into. Funny story there. But we moved into a little duplex in Hillcrest, and I decided I was going to try college. So a little bit about my background is I was homeschooled on and off, and I went to trade school for audio engineering. And so I've always been very non-traditional education, look it up online, figure it out yourself. And so college for me was like, everyone's like, oh, Brady's going to college. That's interesting. We'll see how this works out. So I gave it a try, signed up for UCC, and 4 days later, my first week of college was October 1st. And we all know, we don't need to go into details there, but yeah, so I had been living in Roseburg for about a week and a half at that time, brand new to town. And that was something I'll never forget. And so that sparked something in me. So between my wife, walking out of the room out of love and saying, you need to want to get better. And then from UCC, me realizing that after 2 near-death experiences in 1 year, I suddenly had this reverence for life. Like, life is worth so much more. And that was something so invaluable that I then understood, is that life is invaluable and time is not unlimited. I finally wrapped my head around that, and a part of me is thankful for that. And I realized that I'm not promised 80 years on this planet, and none of us are. And so I'm going to try to make this count. And so that was the beginning of my comeback story. So now, fast forward, I'm still in Roseburg, so there's something good about this town. It's been over 5 years since I have sustained what I would call a depressive episode, or a major depressive episode. And that's a big deal for someone like me who has moved around from town to town every couple of years and had these wild ups and downs of depression and anxiety. And so what I want to talk to you about today is a couple things. What changed between then and now? How does someone who struggled with this their entire life, their identity, self-conscious, not confident, go from, someone who's randomly at the Rotary talking to you about mental health and depression and why it's important and, why am I here? And so if I ask you the question again, if you know somebody who struggles with depression, would you raise your hand? I should all be able to raise your hand. There we go. And so I want to take a second to point out that if you hadn't raised your hand before, if you're trying to wonder that person who is where I was a few years ago, who's burnt out on life and who's struggling to get out of bed and they're wondering, like, who am I? Why am I here? This is your friend. This is your brother. This is your sister. This is your mom, your dad. This is your kid, your spouse. Could be. And so I just want to take a second to say that it's not always easy to see. And so the main reason why I'm up here today is because I want to make depression okay to talk about. It's super simple. It's an invisible disease. It takes the lives of tons of people every day, and it's stuffed under this stigma. There's a stigma around it. I don't know where it came from. I'm not really concerned with that. I don't care, but we act like it isn't there and like we have something to prove. And so I'm simply here to try and make this okay to talk about and make mental health as big of a conversation as our physical health is. We wouldn't have an issue talking to someone about our dentist appointment last week. I went and got my teeth cleaned. Well, why? Because it's important to take care of our teeth. Why should it be an issue for me to tell my friend, yeah, I went and saw my psychologist last week? Well, because we need to keep our mental health in check. It's important. You wouldn't stop flossing and brushing your teeth, so why would you stop taking care of your mind? So mental health needs to be a part of our conversation in places like this, in our schools, and in our homes, if we want to succeed. And so because this is the Rotary and we're here to learn from each other, and I wanted to bring a little bit something tactical and strategic, I want to teach you real quick 5 quick steps that you can take right now to overcome depression. And really, if you're not depressed, I think these are just 5 great steps that you can use to build a life, to build a life where you're anchored. And so even if you don't struggle like I do or have in the past, you know someone that does, and you can help use these 5 steps and be this for someone else. You can be this in their life. And so the first one is, these are 5. I'm going to break them down real quick for you. The first one is, I truly believe, and this is all from my, my journey. This isn't, I'm giving a talk. I need to Google. Go ahead.
Could you repeat that? The first one is?
Oh, I was going to say it, and then I have ADD, and so I pulled something from over here, and I decided to backtrack.
Did you turn the microphone on when you started?
Oh, no, I did not, actually. Oh, maybe it is on. How about that? I can hold. You want me to hold it? Be a little louder. And so this isn't something I Googled real quick and said, oh crap, I'm giving a speech at the Rotary. I need this list. I'd hit up Ryan and say, I need 5 steps to overcoming depression. Help me out, man. This is from personal experience. And I think it was after about 3 or 4 years, I looked at my wife one day. We were in the car, and I'll never forget. I said, I haven't, and I was really nervous to say it. I said, I haven't been depressed in a while. And she's like, I guess you haven't. Interesting. And so, I just kind of sat on that. I said, I think there's something to this. And I said, this is weird for me to, it's just been so long. And I got kind of nervous at that point. Like, when's it going to hit me next? When's that next low going to creep up out of nowhere? And so anyways, long story short, I ended up putting together a list and kind of breaking down what are the things I did since I moved to Roseburg that helped me get to this healthy, stable spot in my life. Like, who are the people that I met? What did I do? And so the first one was I needed someone to guide me. I needed a mentor. And I didn't have that in my life. And so the first person for me was my father-in-law. I have the best father-in-law in the world. His name's Tim Skelly. He's a chaplain. He's a pastor. And so very blessed to have him as a father-in-law. But I needed someone to guide me. I needed a mentor, because you can't, I think it's foolish to try and go through life alone. And I'm kind of preaching to the choir. I mean, obviously you're at the Rotary, and so you know the importance of having other people in your life. And so this isn't, a mentor is not a business coach, someone to help you hit the next level, but and someone to guide you in your business and your strategy. I mean, that's important as well. I'm not going to downplay that, but I'm talking about someone who has the character of who you want to be. Someone who you look at, they're, 40, 60, 80, 90 years old, and you say, I want to be like that at the end of my life. I want to be like that person. I want to have that legacy. Like, I want that happiness. I want that richness. And so for me, that was my father-in-law, and it could be anyone for you. And secondly, they need to have the same shared values and beliefs. I think that one's kind of obvious, and I have to give some credit to Seth Bueckley for this. He kind of helped me with this mentor framework that he's working on. And the third thing is they need to have your best interest at heart. It's really easy for a mentor or a coach or someone you've hired or paid, a consultant, someone for your business to just be interested in the numbers and just be interested in the business. But if you have a mentor, they seriously need to have your best interest at heart. They need to be able to tell you things out of love. You need to have, even if you don't call it a mentor, you don't meet up with them once a week, you need to have one person in your life who's willing to tell you the hard stuff that you don't want to hear. Because your friends aren't always going to tell you the hard things. So make sure you have that one person in your life who is going to be there along the way to guide you. The second thing that I can attribute to breaking free from depression and really sustaining a healthy life is having consistent community. And now I don't mean the community as in the town you live in, the people you work with. I don't mean Roseburg or a large community. I mean the people that you do life with. I'm strongly convicted that we need authentic relationships outside just our normal friend group. But we need deep relationships. We need people that we go deep into life with. We need people to help us hold each other accountable. And this is kind of similar to a mentor, but really a core group of friends that you're doing life with, who you check in with on a regular basis. I like to call these your 2 a.m. friends. I don't mean 2 a.m. because you're staying out to the bar and you have friends who can go out late with you. I mean, when stuff really hits the fan at 2 a.m., who can you call on? So, my friend Ryan says that you should have up to 5 people in your phone at any given time that you can call on in an emergency or a time of need. So who are the people in your life that you can really call on at any time when things get tough, that are going to be there for you, that you can count on? consistent community is huge in the fight against depression. The next important thing in the fight against depression is fueling for the fight. Now, what I mean by this is that there's a massive correlation between our physical health and our mental health. How well we take care of our bodies or how we don't take care of our bodies plays a direct correlation into the ability to control our emotions and our mental fitness. And so I know it's so simple, but we tend to overcomplicate it. We get too busy, we get stressed out in life, we drop our good habits, and basic things like getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, they tend to become unimportant. So really it's just these basic habits: sleep, water, diet, and exercise. You got to take care of yourself in order to take care of your brain. And then things like alcohol and caffeine in moderation. I love beer just as much as the next person, but alcohol is a depressant. Too much of it, and you're going to put yourself at higher risk for depression, not only in the moment, but in the time afterwards as well. And as far as caffeine, I know anxiety is a common issue for a lot of people. I struggle with anxiety myself. I struggle with anxiety more often on days when I've had too much caffeine. And so it sounds silly and simple, but if you're struggling with anxiety, one of the first things you might want to look at is taking a look at how much caffeine you're intaking. And if it's too much, maybe try and hit the reset button there. So fuel for the fight, your mental fitness depends partially on your physical fitness. So take care of yourself. The fourth thing is discover your calling. So I remember calling my dad one day and asking him, "Dad, how did you know what you wanted to be when you grow up?" And he said, I'll never forget it. He said, "I never did, and I still don't." And he was kind of laughing at he said it. And I think maybe some of you can relate to that because the truth is it's about discovering your calling. It's not about finding your calling. I think so many of us put this pressure on ourselves to try and have everything figured out. We're looking at our friends, we're looking at the next person thinking, they've already graduated college, they've already got their job, they got their promotion. Life just looks picture perfect from the outside. We don't even know if that person's happy where they're at. And frankly, it's none of our business. So we need to focus on discovering our calling, what we're called to do, what we're passionate about, really find out what it's like to really run in our lane at 100%. And so we don't need to have it all figured out, but I think the one thing we do need is momentum. I know for me personally, the process of discovering my calling and trying new things, trying different jobs, learning new skill sets was huge. And this is partially just because of the way that I'm wired, but I think this talks specifically to entrepreneurs, to self-starters, to creatives. You know this better than anyone that we feed off momentum. So not only do we need to be moving and building and creating, but what we're moving towards has to really matter. Like what we're moving towards has to really matter down to our core. That's exactly why I'm here talking to you about comeback stories. That's why I'm passionate about talking to people about mental health and depression and how we can take care of ourselves. What we're moving towards has to matter in some capacity. And so I really think it's important for us to have that thing to look forward to. You know, my last note on this is that I read a survey once where they talked to basically some of the oldest people in America, and they were trying to find the commonalities between them. They'd ask them like, what's your secret to living to 99 years old? What's your secret to get into this age? You know, you'd have a guy saying, I smoke a pack of cigarettes a day and a six-pack on the weekend, whatever. And you'd have somebody saying, good diet and exercise, and then, happiness. You'd have all these different wild answers. Of course, none of them are legitimate or whatever. It's everyone's opinion. But the one thing they had in common, the one thing, was that they had a reason to wake up. They had something to wake up for. There was something they were doing every day, whether that was gardening or their job or their family. They had something to work towards. So just think about that. The last thing, one more note on that. I'd encourage you to pursue what matters most and spend your time serving others. I think a lot of us, when we're looking for the perfect job or the perfect career, we think about what's going to make me happy. And for myself, I've really found that when I am chasing after that, when I'm chasing after what's going to make me the happiest, where can I make the most amount of money, that's not when I'm happy. It actually causes the opposite, it has the opposite effect. And so really think about what skills do you have, what can you do for other people, and how can you better spend your time serving others? Because selflessness is sustainable, and you're going to get a lot further, you're going to be a lot happier, excuse me, when you're focused on serving other people instead of what can I get for myself. And lastly, the most important part of my story is identity. We need to know who we are and how much we're worth. We need to understand who we are and how much more worth. So we're not anyone else. So why would we compare ourselves to others? We have unique skills and unique gifts. We have unique callings. We have unique smiles. Nobody else smiles like you. Nobody else acts like you. Nobody else has a brain like you do. Nobody else has ideas like you do. But yet we spend so much of our time, so much of our lives comparing ourselves to others at our jobs, in our families and friendships, and on social media, looking at what somebody else might have or what somebody else is, and we just do so much comparing. It's poisonous. And so we really need to stop caring about other people's opinion of us and start listening to what God says about us in the Bible. We have so much worth. We have so much value. We are so uniquely and wonderfully made. And once we begin to head down that path and really learn about that and understand what that means, we understand our true worth, that's when we start to form an identity. That's when we start to have roots. That's when our confidence goes up. I know for me, a big part of my depression was not having the confidence. And I had an awesome upbringing. I have an amazing family. I have amazing parents. I was raised in a strong Christian home with what I feel like it was a solid faith. But not to anyone's fault, I was just lacking a certain amount of confidence. And it's because I didn't completely understand who I was in God. I didn't completely understand my identity. And so I just want you to know that if you're watching this right now, every single one of you, you have unsurpassable worth. You are worth so much more than you could ever imagine. And you have a specific purpose, and you are put on this planet for a reason. No, the reason I'm put on this earth is to simply tell my story and be an encouragement and be a light to others. And so understand how much you're worth. And so these 5 steps, this is how I found my joy. This is where I found consistent happiness instead of all these ups and downs. And I am a completely different person than I was over 5 years ago. And so I don't take these steps lightly. And if it weren't for my hope and my identity in Jesus, then I wouldn't have a comeback story at all. And so thank you for listening. I know I moved through this pretty quickly. If you want to dive a little bit deeper on this, I've actually put together an entire series, an entire course on this. It's something I've sold in the past, and now I'm giving it away for free, just because I simply want to help people. I want to learn from this. I want feedback on this, and I want other people to have access to what really transformed my life. And so make sure to check out the series and the podcast as well. It's all going to be at mycomebackstory.com. Now, if you got value out of this video, please share it up. Shoot me a message. I would love to hear what you got out of it. And if you have an organization or if you have a group and you'd like me to come speak on this topic of depression and mental health and identity and culture, I would absolutely be thrilled to do that. Just shoot me a message or reach out to me at Brady at mycomebackstory.com. Thanks for watching. Go write your own comeback story.